There is always a moment unexpected, silent, devastating, when it finally hits them. Maybe it's waking up one morning, driving alone in the car, or scrolling past an old photo of you. And suddenly, like a punch to the chest, they realize it's over, completely, irreversibly. Up until that point, they live with a subtle illusion that maybe, somehow, there's still a chance. Maybe one day they could fix things. Maybe you'd still be there, waiting. But that day never comes. Because life has moved on and you're no longer even looking in their direction. That's when the cold truth lands. They're not in your story anymore. Toxic people survive on pride. Pride convinces them they can always come back, that their charm will work again, that they can always win someone over. But this time it's different. No apology, no manipulation, no performance. Will work. And it's not because you're angry. It's because you're indifferent. And indifference is far deadlier than hate. Hate still binds two people together. Indifference severs the tie completely. That's when the weight of missed chances crushes them. Every betrayal, every lie, every moment they chose ego over kindness becomes a stone in their chest. And here's the cruelest irony of guilt. It doesn't just make you regret what you did. It makes you see every single chance you had to do better, and no, you didn't take. The world begins to feel smaller. Once you were part of their everyday, your voice, your presence, your energy added color to their life. Without you, everything feels muted. The people they replaced you with don't have your depth, your loyalty, your understanding. They realize too late that they traded something rare for something temporary, and now it's gone forever. This is the stage of psychological collapse. Guilt stops being background noise and becomes the loudest voice in their head. It whispers at night when they can't sleep. It interrupts them in the middle of the day, and it says the same thing over and over. You did this to yourself. Some will try to numb it, some will distract themselves, but many will break. And in that breaking, they finally see the full weight of what they lost. And here's where your emotional intelligence protects you. You don't need revenge. You don't need their apology. You don't even need them to understand your pain, because life has already handled justice on your behalf. You've built a new foundation, peaceful, resilient, untouchable. You're no longer the same person they hurt. You've evolved into someone wiser, stronger, and far beyond their reach. I remember one man who told me about a friend who had cut him off years earlier, without explanation. At the time, he shrugged it off, arrogant enough to believe he didn't need the friendship. But years later, after losing his job and facing a divorce, he tried to reconnect only to find the number no longer in service. He told me, "In that moment, it felt like the ground disappeared beneath me. I didn't just lose a friend. I lost my chance to be the man I should have been." That is the power of a door that closes for good, and that is the final lesson. When guilt finally catches up, it isn't just about regret. It's about the crushing realization that you can never undo the damage. That's the deepest punishment of all, knowing they will carry that weight for the rest of their life. So let them. Let them wake at 3 a.m. haunted by memories of what they did. Let them replay the moments they thought they held the upper hand, only to realize those were the very seeds of their downfall. Because here's the truth. You don't need to punish them. You don't need to prove anything. Life, karma, and their own conscience will do it for you, far more effectively than you ever could. And while they remain trapped in the prison of their own making, you will be free, living in peace, building your future, thriving in a way they never imagined. That is the revenge they never saw coming. So keep moving forward. Keep building yourself. Keep your emotional intelligence sharp and your inner peace unshakable. You are no longer part of their world, and that's why they will never escape yours. If this resonated with you, drop a comment below. I choose peace over revenge. And if you want to go deeper, explore our StoicCraft playlist, a library of lessons designed to help you protect your mind, rebuild your self-worth, and thrive in a world full of noise. And here's why Stoics never feed the obsession, because even the smallest reaction from you becomes oxygen for them. Stoicism teaches that real strength lies not in controlling others, but in mastering your own reactions. That's why the Stoic approach is to remain unshaken. The less access they have to your life, the more their imagination takes over. And imagination is always crueler than reality. They begin to picture you happy, at peace, surrounded by people who value you, and that mental image cuts deeper than any confrontation ever could. Consider this real-life example. A man I once knew broke off an engagement with shocking coldness, no explanation, just silence. His ex-fiancée didn't beg, didn't lash out, didn't even post about it. Instead, she poured her energy into starting a small business. Slowly but steadily, she built her own empire. Months later, as her achievements became visible, he became obsessed. Not because he wanted her back, but because he couldn't stand the fact that she was thriving without him. Every milestone she reached was another dagger in his pride. He scrolled through her pages late at night, searching for signs of struggle and finding none. That's the thing about obsession. It doesn't need love, only an unresolved ego wound. And here lies the trap. They chain themselves to you in a one-sided prison. You move forward while they circle in the same loop. Guilt to curiosity, curiosity to obsession, obsession back to guilt. Every time they see you winning, they're reminded not just of what they lost, but of the painful truth. They were the cause of that loss. It becomes a cycle that feeds on itself until it consumes them. Why? Does this matter? Because obsession is unsustainable. It devours mental energy, erodes self-esteem, and eventually forces a breaking point. At that point, they face two choices: confront the guilt head-on or bury it under distraction. Most choose distraction: new relationships, overworking, substances, escapism. But guilt always runs faster than the escape. It catches them eventually, and when it does, their world begins to crumble. Cracks appear everywhere. Work performance declines because their mind is elsewhere. Relationships strain because they're emotionally absent. Health deteriorates under the weight of stress, anxiety, and sleepless nights. From the outside, it looks like a slow decline. From the inside, it feels like sinking in quicksand. The more they struggle, the deeper they sink. This is the dangerous spiral. Obsession evolves into self-sabotage. They start making reckless choices, not because they want to fail, but because their focus is fractured. They can't give themselves fully to anything, because part of their mind is always stuck on you. And here's the most bitter irony. The more damage they do to themselves, the more they project the blame onto you. Even though you've done nothing, They convince themselves that if you were still around, things would be different. But the Stoic perspective is clear. You are not responsible for the self-destruction of those who hurt you. Their collapse is their consequence. Their spiral belongs to them. Your only duty is to protect your peace, live with integrity, and walk your path forward. People are architects of their own downfall when they refuse to face the truth. Your role is not to rescue them, it's to stay on your path. Intervening would only reopen old wounds and drag you back into the chaos you fought so hard to escape. I think of a woman I once knew who finally ended a toxic friendship after years of betrayal. She never called her friend out in public. She never waged a campaign to expose her. She simply stopped responding, stopped engaging, and moved forward with her life. Over time, she heard through mutual acquaintances that her former friend had lost her job, cycled through failed relationships, and was struggling with severe anxiety. Every time life broke her down, she reached back for the comfort of the past, talking to others about how things used to be. But the woman never replied, not out of cruelty, out of clarity. She knew that rescuing someone from the consequences of their choices would rob them of the only lesson strong enough to change them. And this is the breaking point, self-destruction. It's the last stage before transformation or total collapse. Some will finally face their guilt here. Many won't. They'll keep digging deeper into the pit until life itself forces them to stop. That's the harsh reality. Just as you cannot make someone love you, you cannot make someone take responsibility for their own mess. Guilt can either be a teacher or a tormentor. That choice belongs to them. I once knew a woman whose ex spent years tearing her down, mocking her dreams, isolating her, undermining her confidence. She left without a fight, rebuilt her life, and months later she was on stage at industry events, confident, radiant, untouchable. When her ex saw her on that stage, he didn't lash out. He went silent, because in that moment, the tidal wave of guilt hit not out of love, but from the realization that he had destroyed something rare, and now it was gone. Forever. That is the ultimate justice. When guilt becomes their prison, you don't have to guard the door. They lock it themselves. You've moved on, but they remain trapped, replaying the moment they lost you. And here's the most stoic truth. You don't need to see them suffer for justice to exist. Justice is knowing your peace is intact while theirs crumbles. Not because you fought back, but because you refuse to play. Your silence and detachment are more powerful than any confrontation. Their own mind becomes their punishment, and there's no sentence harsher than one you can't escape. But guilt doesn't just linger, it grows. It starts as a seed, but left unchecked, it mutates into something darker, obsession. At first, their reaction is denial, defensiveness, even mockery. But denial loses its strength over time, and guilt festers underneath. Human psychology hates unresolved tension. The mind circles back again and again to what it can't resolve. At first, it's just flashes occasional thoughts about you. Little memories they try to push away, but soon it's like a song stuck on repeat. They think about your last conversation. They analyze the look on your face when you walked away. They wonder where you are now, what you're doing, and with whom. And the cruel irony? The harder they try not to think of you, the more their mind drags you back. Psychologists call this the ironic process theory. When you tell yourself not to think about something, your brain does the opposite. It brings it up even more. And so the cycle begins. From guilt to curiosity. From curiosity to fixation. Once guilt opens the door, obsession often walks right through. Curiosity is the doorway, and once it opens, obsession often walks right in. At first they wonder how your life is going without them, not out of love or care, but as a way of measuring their own significance. When they see you thriving, when they see you moving forward without looking back, that curiosity hardens into something sharper obsession. This is when they start lurking from the shadows, checking your social media late at night, asking mutual friends about you without ever admitting why. They scan for any sign that you miss them, because if you don't, it confirms the truth they fear most. They were never as important as they believed. The first sign is that they can't predict you anymore. Toxic people thrive on predictability. They study you, not with love, but with the cold calculation of a hunter studying prey. They learn what triggers you, what makes you insecure, what makes you beg for closure. But when you refuse to give them the reactions they expect, you shatter their psychological map of you. I remember a man who loved to dominate conversations with subtle insults and passive-aggressive jabs. The moment I stopped defending myself and instead smiled or calmly changed the subject, I saw the flicker of confusion on his face. That confusion grew into frustration and eventually into fear. Because if they can't predict you, they can't control you. The second sign, their power plays begin to backfire. They might escalate, spreading rumors, trying to spark jealousy, even playing the victim to gain sympathy. But the irony is this: the harder they try, the more transparent their tactics become. Psychological projection starts to turn against them. The very traits they try to pin on you, selfishness, instability, dishonesty, start showing up in their own behavior. People begin connecting the dots, and nothing terrifies a manipulator more than losing the audience they once controlled. The third sign, they are haunted by the loss of influence. When they realize they can no longer dictate your feelings, the loss hits deeper than you might think. It's not just about you, it's about their illusion of power over everyone. Losing influence over one person forces them to face the truth. They are not untouchable. Some will grow desperate to pull you back into their orbit, not from love but from the terror of irrelevance. They may even apologize, not out of remorse, but because they're desperate to restore their self-image. From a Stoic perspective, this is the most important moment for you. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. This is not the time to gloat, to seek validation, or to return to the game. This is the time to stand in quiet strength. Emotional intelligence means recognizing that their loss of control is their lesson, not your entertainment. It is life holding up a mirror to their choices. You'll feel the shift. Conversations grow shorter. Their attempts to bait you into drama become weaker. They stop meeting your eyes. The tension that once weighed on you now rests entirely on them. And in that silence, you've reclaimed something far greater than revenge. You've reclaimed your self-worth, your peace, and your focus. You've become someone they can no longer derail. Here's the part most people miss. Once a toxic person realizes they've lost control, They often avoid you altogether, not because you've threatened them, but because your presence has become unbearable. You are a living reminder that their power isn't absolute. That's the true victory, not in defeating them, but in becoming untouchable, because the cruelest punishment isn't something you deliver. It's something they deliver to themselves. Long after you've walked away, long after the arguments fade, they're left with the one enemy they can never manipulate: silence, or escape, their own mind. Toxic people thrive in chaos because chaos drowns out their conscience. As long as they're busy hurting, controlling, or distracting others, they don't have to face the truth about themselves. But when you step out of their game, you remove their favorite weapon, distraction. And in that silence, guilt creeps in like a slow, unshakable shadow. Here's the paradox. The very people who hurt you often convince themselves they'll never feel remorse. They justify their cruelty, tell themselves you were weak, or that they were right to treat you the way they did. But guilt doesn't need their permission to exist. It's wired into human psychology. At first, it whispers, "What if I went too far? What if they were actually good to me?" Soon, that whisper becomes a thought they can't shake. And eventually, it turns into a loop they can't escape. Every reminder of you, your silence, your absence, your growth feeds that loop. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When they're alone, their mind becomes a mirror, replaying every cruel word, every betrayal, every selfish act. They replay the story not out of empathy, but to try to rewrite it in their favor. But every attempt to rewrite it only reinforces the truth. You were the one who walked away with dignity, and they were the one who destroyed the bridge. This is how guilt eats them alive. Psychologists call it cognitive dissonance, the tension of holding two conflicting beliefs. I'm a good person versus I treated them terribly. The greater the gap, the more unbearable the tension becomes. And since they can't undo the past, that tension mutates into anxiety, irritability, and self-destructive choices. That's why so many spiral jumping from one relationship to another, picking fights over nothing, sabotaging their careers. They're running from the one voice they cannot silence, their conscience. And this is where your absence becomes power. The Stoic response is not revenge, it's detachment. You step back, and in doing so, you take your energy out of their reach. You remove the supply they once depended on to regulate their emotions. Now, your absence is the reminder they can't escape. Every success you achieve without them becomes proof that they were never as essential to your life as they wanted to believe. And that truth burns deeper than any insult ever could. This is why emotional intelligence and strong boundaries are so powerful. You're not seeking revenge. You're protecting your peace. But to them, your peace is the loudest threat imaginable. Over time, fear doesn't just gnaw at their mind. It begins breaking down their body. Stress hormones like cortisol stay elevated, leading to fatigue, digestion issues, weakened immunity, even premature aging. They look older than they should. They move slower than before. Their voice loses conviction, and the more they notice their own decline, the deeper fear digs its claws in. Here's the devastating Stoic truth. You cannot be fearless unless you are guiltless. While they remain trapped in a cage of their own making, you are free to move forward. And freedom is something they may never taste again, At least not until they face the truth. By the time they even consider it, it may already be too late. Because when guilt evolves into fear, and fear takes the wheel of their decisions, there's a predictable next stage: collapse. It doesn't usually explode in dramatic fashion. Instead, it arrives quietly, like the foundation of a building slowly eroding until the entire structure can no longer stand. The collapse almost always begins in relationships. Trust is fragile, and guilt eats away at it. A guilty person becomes defensive even during harmless conversations. They interpret neutral comments as hidden accusations. They lose the ability to connect deeply because connection requires vulnerability, and vulnerability threatens to expose their truth. Friends feel the distance. Colleagues sense unease. Family notices something's off but can't explain why. Relationship by relationship, the bonds weaken. And here's the irony: they often convince themselves that others are abandoning them. In reality, they're the ones pushing people away, because they're never fully present. They're always mentally running from their own conscience, and that makes every interaction feel hollow. Then the collapse moves into their reputation. Reputation, like glass, is transparent but incredibly fragile. When guilt drives someone into paranoia, they overcompensate. They try too hard to look trustworthy. They defend themselves before anyone has even accused them. Over time, people notice the pattern and begin to doubt them quietly. In the professional world, this is deadly. Opportunities vanish. Partnerships crumble. Promotions slip away. In the social world, gossip begins to circulate not because you said a word, but because their suspicious behavior sparks curiosity. Curiosity becomes speculation, and speculation becomes a story. Tragically, that story often reveals the truth. The third domino to fall is their inner stability. Human beings cannot live in constant self-defense without paying a price. Chronic stress literally alters brain chemistry. It shrinks the ability to think long-term, pushing people into impulsive choices that create even bigger problems. In trying to protect themselves, they dig a deeper hole. I once knew a woman who betrayed a close friend over money. At first, she acted as if nothing had happened, but eventually she became obsessed with managing appearances, and that obsession made her reckless, overpromising in business, overextending financially, lying to cover lies. Within a few years, her career collapsed, not because the friend exposed her, but because paranoia made her self-destruct. This is the essence of the silent collapse. It isn't one dramatic event, it's a chain reaction, each consequence feeding the next. And the most devastating part, it's self-inflicted. From a Stoic perspective, collapse is not punishment, it's consequence. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that we are the sum of our choices. When someone chooses betrayal, lies, and cruelty, they are also choosing, whether they admit it or not, the chain of effects that inevitably returns to them. And for you, this understanding is freedom, because you don't need to be the executioner. You don't need to start a war, gather allies, or prove a point. Life itself, in its quiet but relentless way, will take care of that. This is the philosophy of emotional intelligence and psychological boundaries in action. You don't seek revenge, you don't wage war, you simply step back, protect your peace, and let the natural order do what it does best. And here's the deeper truth. Their collapse isn't fueled by your retaliation, but by your absence. When they can no longer read your mind, rewrite your narrative, or predict your moves, they're left alone with the one enemy they cannot escape: their own reflection. And that reflection gets harder to face with every passing day, by the time. Their collapse becomes visible to the outside world. It's already been eating away inside for years. Their confidence is gone. Their influence is gone. Their energy is drained. They start moving through life like a shadow of who they used to be. And when that moment comes, the universe doesn't shout, it whispers. This is what you chose. There is a sharp, unforgettable moment when the person who wronged you realizes the game is no longer theirs to play. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's as subtle as a glance, a hesitation in their voice, or a shift in their body language. But under the surface, something inside them cracks. Control is the lifeblood of toxic people. It's how they feel secure, how they validate themselves, how they avoid confronting their flaws. They manipulate the story, dictate the pace of the relationship, decide how others see you, and most of all, they keep you reacting. But when you stop reacting, when your emotional intelligence becomes sharper than their tactics, their carefully constructed world starts to collapse. They lose their grip. For the first time, they are no longer the puppeteer. Why? Because guilt is internal debt. And unlike money, you can't pay it off with cash. It demands a different currency: truth, accountability, emotional atonement. Without those, the debt keeps compounding interest until it crushes the person carrying it. Here's the paradox. Toxic people are masters of avoiding accountability. They'll deny wrongdoing even when evidence is undeniable. They'll rewrite the past until they paint themselves as the misunderstood hero, or at least not the villain. But deep beneath the lies they tell others, and even beneath the lies they tell themselves, the wound they caused remains. And guilt is patient. It waits. Psychologists call this intrusive cognition, unwanted thoughts triggered by the smallest cues. A smell, a song, a stranger's face that reminds them of you. In an instant, they're dragged back to the crime scene of their own choices. They might shake it off, but each time it returns, the damage grows. Imagine carrying a backpack filled with stones. At first, you barely notice, but as days turn to weeks and weeks to months, the weight becomes unbearable. That's guilt. It grows heavier, not lighter, and numbing doesn't erase it. Alcohol, drugs, rebounds, overwork, they only delay the confrontation. The more they delay, the stronger it hits when it returns. This is why you don't have to chase justice. This is why you don't need their apology to heal. The moment you step out of the battlefield, you force them into a war with themselves. And that's a war no one wins until they face the truth. Take a real example. A man betrayed his best friend in business, stole clients, spread lies, left him in ruin. He moved away, started a new company, acted as if nothing had happened. On the surface, he was thriving, but close friends noticed. He drank more, avoided quiet moments, grew agitated when loyalty or betrayal came up in conversation. That wasn't strength. That was guilt leaking through the cracks of his armor. Stoicism explains this clearly. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When someone violates their integrity, their soul absorbs the stain, and until they repent, Guilt colors everything, every relationship, every decision, every attempt at happiness. Here's another truth toxic people won't admit. The more they avoid you, the more they think about you. Avoidance is not freedom, it's obsession in disguise. Every effort to stay away becomes a reminder of what they can't face. And in that dark space of avoidance, guilt grows like mold. Sometimes guilt even invades their dreams. Researchers have found unresolved guilt often shows up as nightmares, symbolic confrontations with the very wrongs they've committed. They wake up sweating, heart racing, disturbed but unsure why. It's their subconscious whispering, "You still haven't faced this, and here's where your power lies." You may feel tempted to say, "Good, let their guilt destroy them." But that mindset still chains you to them. True power is letting guilt do its work without you feeding it. You let go not to free them, but to free yourself. Because here's the paradox, you won't always witness their collapse. You may never hear an apology, but if you could see the sleepless nights, the nervous outbursts, the inner torment, you'd realize karma has already arrived. And by the time guilt finally consumes them, you'll be living a new life full of peace, purpose, and strength so far removed that their suffering is irrelevant. That's when you realize you've already won. A guilty conscience is one of the heaviest burdens a human being can carry. Outwardly, they may look strong, smile often, post perfect pictures. But inside, the weight is crushing. It's not physical exhaustion, it's psychological erosion, the slow wearing away of their mind and spirit. Toxic people think they've escaped consequences simply because no one is confronting them. But the absence of confrontation is not the absence of consequence. In fact, it's worse, because now there's no one left to blame, no enemy to fight, no distraction, only themselves. And when the spotlight turns inward, the shadows of their conscience become impossible to ignore. And that's when guilt proves itself to be far more powerful than regret. Ironically, the very behaviors toxic people use to cover their guilt often expose it more clearly to everyone around them. I once saw this play out firsthand. A man betrayed his closest friend in a business deal. At first, he strutted with false pride, even boasting about how clever he was for taking the bigger share. But a year later, when that friend succeeded, without him, paranoia crept in. He couldn't bear the thought that others might know the truth. So unprovoked, he started smearing his former friend to mutual acquaintances. And the irony? His overreaction was exactly what made people suspicious, until eventually the truth came out. That's the paradox of fear. In trying to hide, they reveal themselves. When your inner world is clean, you move with quiet confidence. You don't scramble to defend yourself against accusations no one has made. You don't need to rewrite history in every conversation. But when guilt transforms into fear, a person becomes an actor constantly performing, constantly drained. And here's where your power lies. You don't need to say a word. Your silence is enough. Your absence is enough. Every time they see you thriving without them, it magnifies their reality that they were wrong, and that wrong has consequences. We live in a society obsessed with public image. Everyone curates their life online to look untouchable. But here's the controversy. The people who hurt you most aren't living free. They're often prisoners of their own guilt, and it's destroying them silently. Modern culture tells you to clap back, to fight for closure, to prove your worth to those who betrayed you. But the Stoic truth flips that on its head. You don't need revenge. Their guilt will punish them far worse than anything you could say or do. People think walking away makes them weak, but here's the uncomfortable fact. Silence and indifference are the ultimate power moves, because nothing terrifies toxic people more than losing control of your reactions. Welcome to StoicCraft, where we turn ancient Stoic philosophy into practical tools for modern life. If you've been betrayed, dismissed, or underestimated, this is where you'll learn how to transform that pain into strength, clarity, and unshakable peace. They thought they could walk away after breaking you, that their lies, betrayal, and cruelty would simply fade into the past without consequence. What they never understood is that guilt is the most merciless punishment of all. It doesn't storm like rage or scream like hatred. It slips into the silence at 2 a.m., replaying every word, every action, every wound they caused you, until the very pain they gave you begins devouring them from the inside. And here's the part they'll never admit. You don't have to lift a finger. You don't need to send a message, raise your voice, or prove a single thing, because the darkness they planted in you, it has already taken root in them. This isn't some distant karma waiting years down the line. This is psychological justice unfolding right now. Guilt is quiet. It lingers, it stalks, and when the moment is right, it suffocates. Think of guilt as a silent executioner. It doesn't strike in one dramatic blow. It erodes, weakens, and gnaws day after day until the person is left as a shadow of who they once were. The human mind craves peace and balance. When someone violates their own moral compass, they can deny it to the world, but their private self never forgets. That's why some of the most outwardly confident people secretly live in torment. And this is why you don't need to fight back against toxic people who wronged you. You don't need to demand closure or try to expose them. Your greatest advantage is this: guilt is working for you 24/7, without your effort, without your permission. It's like an unpaid bodyguard, silently guarding your peace. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance, the discomfort of knowing your actions don't align with your values. By day they rationalize their behavior, but at night, when silence falls, their mind becomes a courtroom. Every memory becomes evidence. Every cruel word becomes a crime scene they can't erase. You've seen it before: someone who wronged you, going out of their way to rewrite the story. They play the victim, slander your name, or talk excessively to justify themselves. But here's the truth. The louder they talk, the more they're trying to drown out that small, unrelenting voice of guilt. And guilt doesn't shrink. It grows. What begins as a whisper becomes a hum, then turns into a weight heavy enough to crush their health, relationships, and even their sleep. Studies show unresolved guilt leads to anxiety, depression, and self-sabotage, the mind punishing itself. This is why your silence is so powerful. When you stop reacting, stop defending, stop chasing their validation, you leave them alone with their thoughts. And for someone carrying guilt, that's like locking them in a room with the harshest interrogator, their own conscience. Consider this real story. A woman once told me her ex-husband cheated, lied, and smeared her reputation. She didn't fight back. She didn't waste her energy on revenge. She rebuilt her life, new friends, new hobbies, and a stronger sense of self-worth than ever before. Years later, he reached out not to apologize, but to test the waters, to see if she still hated him. The truth? She had moved on so completely she barely thought of him. That detachment broke him more than any confrontation could. Because while she was free, he was still carrying the guilt. That's the Stoic truth. You don't own their guilt. They do. You don't need to manage it or manipulate it. By choosing emotional intelligence and inner peace, you naturally become a mirror they can't bear to look into. Toxic people can run from you, block you, or pretend you never existed. But none of that matters, because guilt rides in the passenger seat when they drive. It sits at the table when they eat. It keeps them awake when they try to sleep. So if you've ever wondered, do they regret what they did? Do they think about me? You don't need to ask. The answer is yes. Maybe not every second, but often enough that it reshapes their life in ways you'll never see. And here's the liberating part. You don't need to see it. Your healing doesn't require proof of their suffering. In fact, the more you let go of needing proof, the faster your healing happens. Because when you focus on your own growth, you step out of the role of victim and into the role of victor. And from that position, you realize the truth the Stoics always knew. The best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's becoming someone they can no longer touch. While guilt eats them alive, it has a strange habit. It always finds its way home. People can run halfway across the world, build new lives, drown themselves in distraction, but guilt doesn't care about distance or time. It's like a boomerang. No matter how far they throw it, it circles back and strikes them when they least expect it.